But really stage three, the refactor and modernize, is where we have to really kind of leave that old cycle, old way of developing applications and move on to more sort of agile and DevOps sort of approach. So this is kind of where the technology kind of maybe clashes with, you know, the culture, changing the culture, changing the perception of how we do application development, especially if we're an enterprise that's sort of or development heavy. So you know, it's kind of lots of in-house stuff being developed for whatever proprietary reasons. What's your take on that? Because we're Tracy, we're kind of looking at breaking up our application from that sort of monolithic into smaller modules. What's your sort of view of that?
It gets dicey because it depends entirely on the initial architecture that you're talking about. So, spending a lot of decades looking and understanding inherently all of these different architectures, they're unique to the context that they were built in, to the business need that they had. When you start to refactor, you don't simply go in and say, I'm just going to rejigger, right? That's my term of the day. You're not just going to rewrite this small piece or refactor this one small piece. You need to look at it and understand what those changes can do, positive and negative, and understanding that. And it may be that you say, I am going to modernize by addressing kind of an O&M. This is a very traditional approach. If you have an application that is more stable and you're going to be having an O&M team, an operations and maintenance team, or a sustainment team, as they are making the next round of changes, they may opt to refactor that feature or that capability so that it's leveraging a more modern technology. It adds a little bit of cost during that time. So the cost of the change, instead of being there, the traditional cost of making that monolithic change, it's always going to cost us, I'm going to make this up, 50 hours to make that change and to field that into production. The first time that you do this, it may take 60 hours, but I will then have saved, because the next time I make a change, I have applied some of those leading practices.
Right.
Adopting DevSecOps principles, right? You don't have to do everything all at once, but adopting those principles, having things as smaller packages decomposed, it is not for the faint of heart, but it's not the most difficult thing. But it does take people sitting down, and not simply a developer making a decision on a Tuesday afternoon. It takes a little bit of thought ahead of time to look at that overall application and understand where are our opportunities and where are the risks, right? If you have something that is a core, it's used by everything, you might not want to touch that as your first area of refactoring.
Exactly.
Right? Look at it from a risk-based perspective. It's just like investing your money, right? Where am I going to get good value? And is that a really risky thing to touch? If I invest there, is that like 70% likelihood that I'm going to lose it, 25% chance of winning? Same thing when you're looking at this. What are the skill sets of my developers? What does the architecture look like beforehand? Where do I think I want to go? And what's the value of doing that?
So it is a stage three. It is about applications, but it's also a cultural change. That's the impact. I think that's probably the greater impact, because we've proven it's not a technology barrier. It's more of a cultural sort of barrier, really, to get to stage three, because we are changing the way that we develop applications, the way that we release updates and things like that. So we kind of get into CI/CD pipelines and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And also how we maintain and manage the applications.
Well, this is often where the failure point comes, because there is cultural change that will happen, but you don't go in and say, I'm going to change the culture. This is where demonstrating model behaviors matters. Leadership, from highest leadership, the whole way, I'm going to say, down to the intern that's coming in the door. There has to be top-down and bottom-up agreement on what you're doing, because this is the hard part. This is change. This is actual change. We're going to be doing things in a different way. We're going to have teams reorganized to rally around potentially a particular module that was all part of a monolith before. So depending on how we're doing this, and we're going to make mistakes. So do we have leadership buy-in? What I find in really big organizations is that I might have the most senior leadership buy-in. I may have the teams themselves wonderfully on board, and it becomes the middle who are being held accountable to the initial milestones that were projected by somebody else.
Right.
They're being held accountable for that. So what happens if I want to make a change and it's going to take us a little bit of learning time? What happens if we want to make a change and we may have some failure? We might have to do this in an A/B. We may need to quickly roll back or roll forward with a fix. Do I have all the people bought in for this? This is the part of change that we don't have to over risk it, but we do have to move. We do have to keep going. And this is often where the failure happens. It's not with stage 4, which is the re-architecting, because if you get to that point, people are all in. They are all in on change. But it is the refactoring and the modernizing, moving from there where they still have muscle memory. Muscle memory will drag you back, Richard. It will absolutely drag you back to the way it used to be as soon as it gets tough.